Before the pandemic, Boston's food sector was a plentiful source of relief for people in need, thanks in part to help from volunteers with an organization called Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. The past year has forced dramatic readjustments, along with a surge in food insecurity. To tell us about rising to the challenge is the group's New England coordinator, Dana Siles. Thank you very much for being with us, Dana.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dana, with your organization, I think of all of these sources, the restaurants who were either shut down or in very reduced kinds of operations, and I'm trying to figure out how can you keep going with this? I mean, didn't you worry at some point this is all going to crash down?
That's a good question. And I think I did. I think that one thing that the pandemic has really brought together among restaurants, volunteers, recipients, you name it, is just the extraordinary need for food and the desire to want to go the extra mile to make sure that people have food and that it doesn't go to waste. So I think that even though on one side you can say it was pure utter chaos at the beginning of the pandemic, on the flip side, the restaurant owners and the business owners, they understood what was at stake, and they understood that it was worth going the extra mile to make sure that food that they had to throw out did not go to waste. And ironically, we've always been kind of shouting this from the rooftops for years. Unfortunately, it took a pandemic to really get it to be kind of common knowledge and just kind of front and center in everybody's mind, the importance of not wasting food. But I give a lot of credit to our food donor partners. Oh, sorry, noise from above. But I give a lot of credit to our food donor partners who were existing before the pandemic, and even those who've come on since the beginning of the pandemic, for working with us to make sure that none of their food goes to waste. They've been really amazing to work with.
Well, you're in the social enterprise field, but at the same time, there are financial incentives to make this work. At least there were before the pandemic. Those changed. So how do you adapt to that?
Thank you for asking. And pre-pandemic, our organization would essentially charge our food donor partners a pickup fee. And that covers all of our logistics as a 501c3 to be able to operate all of the pickups every single day, which we're doing about 140 a week now, which is double of what we did before the pandemic started. Now, despite the fee, our food donor partners would benefit from even having to pay for the service because they would experience reduced disposal costs. They would be eligible, if they're a food business, for enhanced tax benefits based on a percentage of the fair market value of the food that they're donating, and also PR. That said, during the pandemic, the businesses can't be thinking end of year. They're thinking end of month right now, just to be able to make ends meet. So starting in March of 2020, we have waived our service fee for all partners who needed it to be waived, which wound up being 100% of them. So we have not charged our food donor partners at all in over a year. So we've been very fortunate. We've been supported by the Boston Resiliency Fund, thanks to Mayor Walsh. We've also been supported by Grubhub and other organizations to be able to continue our service without charging our food donor partners. And that has wound up increasing food donations by over 60%, not having to charge them. So it A, increased food donations from existing partners, and B, allowed us to start working with food donor partners who could not have afforded our service even before the pandemic, who now were coming on and who've been just extraordinary to work with. So what that's taught us is we want to make this a free service whenever possible. So my goal is to continue the free service until at least the end of the year, and ideally indefinitely. That would be the ideal scenario, because I look at it as, if businesses are willing to go the extra mile to make sure that none of their food goes to waste, and they're willing to collaborate with us to make sure it's going to the right place at the right time and accept our volunteers to come and pick it up, I believe they should just benefit all the way around. So, get that enhanced tax benefit, reap those disposal, the reduced disposal costs, get the PR. You're doing a great job. You're doing a great deed. Why not just benefit completely from it? So we are seeking support in order to make that happen, because we are a 501c3. It's just myself and one other part-time staff member, Claire. We run the operation completely, and we just need to be able to keep it going. There's a lot of logistics kind of behind the scenes. We also have a pretty sophisticated tech platform to make this a seamless experience for our volunteers and our donors and our recipients. And as long as we can keep it funded in order to keep it going and keep the tech platform going and be able to work with our volunteers one-on-one, then we're in great shape.
Well, while you were making all these pivots around the supply side, you were getting some cries for help with the demand side. All those people who are going through food insecurity right now, especially in the Boston Public Schools.
Yes. So in March, we got a series of requests from Boston Public Schools, from Neighborhood House Charter School, from Boston Healthcare for the Homeless Program, Pine Street Inn, St. Francis House, and a few other organizations. And their request was, would we be able to deliver food directly to the homes of their clients or students? Now, pre-pandemic, we only recovered excess food and we only delivered to human service agencies. That is the nature of our organization. We are Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. But now is a time that called for filling a gap that was critical and immediate and pressing. So we pivoted our operations right there. And in April, we started doing our home deliveries. Since then, we have delivered over 36,000 meals to 374 homes in the greater Boston area. And that is in partnership with the schools and organizations that I mentioned. It's become an invaluable service. We're hoping to continue it even until after September, if possible. Right now, our funding runs out in September, but we're going to try to continue it after. So we're talking with the schools and the organizations right now to figure out how to make that happen.
Well, what I'm gathering is that before you could have a volunteer taking a lot of food to one sort of central location, but now you've got volunteers taking smaller amounts, maybe to more different locations, and you've got to minimize the amount of time that takes.
Yes.
How does that happen?
So we created an app, and I have to give that credit to Lizzie Flagg, one of our rescuers. She actually created a home delivery app for us to streamline the process. So what we do is every time we are picking up food from one of our donors, we route that food to 3 homes, and we average 2.5 per meals per person, per home, per delivery. So in a nutshell, let's say a family of 4 would likely receive 10 meals during one single delivery. And we'll put that family on a weekly route from the same restaurant going to their home every week. Now, the restaurants know that these recipients are getting their food on a weekly basis. So they've created menu items that they circulate every 3 or 4 weeks, because we don't want the families to get bored of the food. We want them to enjoy it. That is true food justice, is not just having healthy food available to you, but also enjoyable and nutritious food. So that has been our primary goal. We've created several routes for our volunteers with all the instructions needed. It implies so much more work on our end and on our volunteers' end, but our volunteers have really stepped up to the plate. They've just been absolutely incredible. And that said, even with excess food, our mission is to reduce wasted food anywhere, anytime. So we don't have a minimum requirement for pickup, even for excess food, for that reason, because we don't see it as just 5 or 10 pounds. We see it as 5 or 10 pounds times many opportunities. So a lot of our human service agencies that we bring food to, they can't accept more than 5 or 10 or 20 pounds of food per delivery. They don't have the refrigeration or freezer storage capacity for that, but they might have 2 or 3 families at their shelter, and they really need our help. So it works out really well to be able to pick up any amount of food. Now, that said, for the home deliveries, we needed a certain level of consistency that our excess food pickups couldn't provide, because sometimes they don't even have excess to pick up, which is a good thing. So we wound up partnering with restaurants who have been preparing meals for us to pick up and transport. And that actually is mostly thanks to Grubhub. We've been able to support specifically minority-owned businesses in Dorchester, Roxbury, Medford, Chelsea, and East Boston to be able to pick up ethnically appropriate food and bring it to our recipient partners and the homes of our recipient partners. So that's just an incredible partnership.
Well, to make this work, you do need more volunteers, but what exactly do you need from a volunteer?
For our volunteers, it's very easy to sign up. You would go to rescuingleftovercuisine.org/volunteer. You would sign up, and then it automatically takes you through an orientation. And the rescuer orientation includes a quiz, but that quiz includes a cheat sheet because we absolutely believe in cheat sheets for quizzes. So once that's done, the rescuer can just sign up for any event that works for you. An event to rescue excess food typically takes about 45 minutes from start to finish. A rescue for prepared meals to homes, that could take a good hour and a half to 2 hours. So what we need from volunteers are people who are willing to literally and figuratively go the extra mile. To take that 1 hour or those 2 hours out of your week or out of your month to do something really powerful and really good. And one of the things that I love most about this organization is that we're all a very small part of a very big thing. And I see Rescuing Leftover Cuisine as much as I would look at a vehicle with 4 wheels. So you have the donor who's 1 wheel, you have the recipient who's 1 wheel, you have the volunteer who's 1 wheel, and then you have our staff who's 1 wheel. And we're all working in sync together to make it happen. If you're driving a vehicle, you're not just relying on 1 wheel more than the other. You need all 4 of those wheels to be working in sync with each other. So working with volunteers who are like-minded and really able to understand and even enjoy being 1 wheel of those 4 wheels to make this happen, that is what we need from people. It's really easy to volunteer. I always say all ages from 9 to 99 can volunteer, and it's just really easy and it's really gratifying.
And where do they need to go online to find out more?
So you would visit rescuingleftovercuisine.org/MA for Massachusetts or /volunteer just to sign up to volunteer. But the main website is rescuingleftovercuisine.org.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was Dana Siles from Rescuing Leftover Cuisine.